Octavio, question for you. If you were to be convinced of evolution, what would that mean?
Stop believing in God. That's what that means. That's exactly
Wow.
what that would mean. I would stop believing in God. You won the debate, Grace. I agree with you 100%.
I can't even tell if you're messing with me right now, man.
Grayson, you won the debate. You know, uh,
We have a debate between the amazing Octavio and the always lovely Grayson Hawk. The topic tonight is evolution real? Grayson, your 6 minutes is yours whenever you're ready.
So perfect. Technically, this is the only slide that I need to demonstrate that evolution is real. We don't need any fossils. We don't need any observations even beyond just genetic sequencing. So this study, the statistical evidence for common ancestry with a specific application to primates, is really all that I would need to demonstrate that evolution is real, even if we never even had a single fossil in existence. So basically what this study is doing is it's taking like 17 different types of primates, humans included in this, and they're comparing their genetic sequences for similarity. And essentially, if this was a separate ancestry model, we can see how that data would be represented here by this sort of orchard where you have these different trees that do not have a common base. That's in contrast with the common ancestry model where all of these different trees are connected at the root. Now you can look at, well, if these were truly separate ancestries, then the root of each of these separate trees, there's not any reason why there would be genetic similarity between them if they're not related. So you can actually feed this into a statistical model at using the actual real genetic data for primates. You can do this for any other clade of living things. And it's been done with archaea, bacteria, eukaryotes, all types. This one, though, I just wanted to highlight because they gave their numbers here that the posterior probability for the family level separate ancestry model, which was the most probable one of all the ones they tested, that is that God created all of these different families individually, and then the families differentiate from there. The probability of that happening is 10 to the power of 1,000 minus 4,528, which is, less statistically likely than picking one atom out of all of the atoms in the universe. It is literally the most statistically unlikely number I've ever seen represented. And this is just for primates. So this alone demonstrates that separate ancestry is statistically, mathematically impossible, and common ancestry is the only model that is supported by the data. But I have more than one slide. So there are some common complaints that I get from Creationists. They say, oh, well, the reason for similarities is because of common design. So I really quick wanted to just demonstrate why that completely falls apart using these two moles. The mole on the left is a golden mole, and the mole on the right is just a common brown mole. They look pretty similar, right? They have common design. And yet, the golden mole on the left is actually more genetically similar to an elephant than the mole on the right. The mole on the left is actually not a true mole. You can see here the actual phylogenetic tree with the genetic similarities, and you can see that the golden mole is more closely related to manatees and elephants than it is to true moles. Thus, common design does not predict genetic similarity. So common design cannot be an answer for genetic similarity. And just to further emphasize this, this slide was just sort of the basic overall idea that like anyone can understand. A little bit more technical is this follow-up study where they did the same kind of statistical test of common ancestry, only this time they tested for that same statistical similarity signal at silent sites. Meaning there's a codon pair, a codon triplet rather, in the genetic code where there's 3 different like letters of DNA, and they code for one amino acid. And that third codon, like that third nucleobase there, is degenerate, meaning it can be multiple different letters and you still get the same amino acid at the end. So there is no functional relevance to that third position. So what they did is they compared the phylogenetic tree that they constructed using only the amino acid sequences, and then they compared it directly to the DNA. And if common design or common functionality was the reason for these similarities, then these should be very different. But they are very similar. That's what's showing here. Like the p-value was 2.48 times 10 to the minus 11. It's just absurdly statistically unlikely that this third codon position would be the same in that many areas of the genome, perfectly aligning to the phylogenetic tree that we looked at earlier. It's just mathematically impossible for these things to have been created separately, unless God is just trying to deceive us, which I don't think is theologically workable. This is my actual argument. All of that was preamble, and I wanted this slide to be my main argument for tonight, because I said all that I really needed was genetic similarity. But this slide right here takes that genetic similarity and introduces the fossil record. And it's the specific combination of the genetics plus the fossil record that I would consider to be the strongest evidence for evolution. So just real quick, this is the phylogenetic tree constructed with a genetic analysis, exactly like what we just went over. And you can see here that on the right, these are the types of insects that go through metamorphosis from a larva to a cocoon to an adult. And on the left, those insects do not at all. These are genetically, this is a phylogenetic tree showing genetic similarity. The width of each of these bars that you can see here is showing how diverse those families are in the fossil record. This really is my main point right here, like, because there is no way to explain this chart without evolution. At least I'm not familiar with any other even possible explanation, because look, you can see here on the far right, this Diptera family, right? So you can see here that they start in the fossil record in like a little after 300 million years ago, and then they get more and more and more diverse as you go higher and higher up in the layers. But over on the far left, those are the most genetically dissimilar, and you can see they start way down here, like back in the Devonian period. So you can see as you progress to the right on this chart, the fossil record gets newer and newer and newer in terms of higher up in the layering. That is the pattern that evolution demands, and that the data shows, and that creationism cannot explain. So that's my main argument for tonight.
All right, thank you, Grayson.
Sorry for going over time. I didn't time this beforehand.
That's okay.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, with that, Octavio, you got about 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Is all yours whenever you're ready, my friend.
Probably won't need that long. I don't consider similarities to be evidence. The question is evolution real? I just don't find the evidence convincing enough, Grayson. Is evolution real in the sense that some people claim that there's evidence for it? Yes, but is it real in the sense that it is true? No. So, is evolution real? The answer is no, it's not real. Why? Because someone has yet to provide me with evidence that I find 100% convincing. I just can't stomach the idea that single-celled organisms, a prokaryote, through the evolution process transformed into 8.7 million organisms, or however many organisms are there on Earth today, of all shapes and sizes. I honestly find it unbelievable, ridiculous, and absurd. Why do I find it absurd? Well, because I don't see it, Grayson. I have never observed it. I have never observed a dog produce a non-dog. I have never seen a prokaryote turn into an eukaryote, and so forth. I have never seen a species produce an organism whose anatomy is clearly distinct from its parents, and then go on to produce a completely different species, like as different as apes and humans are. Have I seen variation within species? Yes, 100%. For example, we have over 400 variations of dog breeds. We have over 1,000 varieties of bananas, rats, you name it, right? 56, I think. So is variation within a species real? Yes. But the idea that these variations over time, over millions of years, through natural selection, are able to go from a tree to a human is, if I'm honest, an insult to my intelligence. Why? Because, like I said, Grayson, I have never seen it. And don't tell me the reason why I haven't seen it is because of millions of years. I'm not going to live for millions of years, Grayson. In fact, no one will, which means no one will never get to witness this theory working at a macro level. Maybe that's why whenever people ask for current macroevolution examples, they are always redirected to the geological column and radiometric dating with all of its assumptions and interpretations, and never to any real life example that we can witness right now, like a prokaryote turning into a eukaryote or a sheep turning into a non-sheep. Can we rely on radioactive decay of isotopes like carbon 14s, aka radiometric dating? With all the assumptions that go into it, personally, I don't think so. I don't think we can. Assumptions like how do we know the initial conditions of the rock when it was first formed, the amount of parents and daughter isotopes, how do we know that there was no contaminations, how do we know that the decay rate has been constant at today's measured rate, not to mention the fact that we have clear examples of tests being carried out and coming back with the wrong dates. Can we rely on gene sequencing to prove common ancestry? Um, the idea that the more similar the DNA between two organisms are, the more likely they are to have had a common ancestor. In my opinion, Grayson, the answer is no. Similarities within DNA sequencing doesn't prove to me that I share a common ancestor with an ape or a banana tree. All it tells me is that living organisms share similar genetic features. Are humans and trees made of eukaryotic cells? Yes. Does this mean I share a common ancestor with a tree? No. Why? Because trees only produce trees and humans only produce humans. This, in my opinion, points. This, in my let me just repeat that. This, in my opinion, points more to a common designer like a god than a common ancestor like a tree. Does homologous features prove evolution? The answer to this question is clearly no. Again, physical structures doesn't prove that men and chimpanzees are related. It just means that there are similarities within Earth's biodiversity. Me, as a recent student of the theory of evolution, I'm not an expert like Grayson here is. I came to realize that when it comes to what passes for evidence for evolution, the bar is very low. Anything by the looks of it can pass for evidence when it comes to evolution. Any similarity between organisms can be viewed as potential evidence for evolution. Examples: apes and humans have arms. This means apes and humans must be related. They both must share a common ancestor. Trees and humans have eukaryotic cells. Oops, we definitely share a common ancestor now. I actually heard Grayson saying he is related to corn on one of his debates. I'm sure Grayson remembers that. I immediately felt so bad for him. I wanted to tell him that no, Grayson, you are more than corn, mate. You are made in the image and likeness of God, not in the image and likeness of corn. Don't believe in this evolution agenda. So, my agenda today is to move the evolution conversation forward. I want to raise the standard of evidence for evolution, very much similar to what atheists require from Christians when they demand evidence for God's existence. Atheists usually say to Christians, in order for them to believe that God exists, they want God to appear to them there and then. And that's the only acceptable form of evidence that will convince them that God exists. Well, I feel the exact same way when it comes to evolution. I want to see macroevolution happen in front of me. I don't want to wait for millions of years to see what humans will evolve into. I want to observe it now. And that's the only form of evidence that will convince me that evolution is real. So, is evolution real? To Grayson, yes. According to his standard of evidence, it is real. But to me, no. No, 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 no. According to my standard of evidence, no, it's not. And that's my opening, guys.
All right. Fantastic. Okay, guys. Good job. I have questions for both of you. So I'll start with Grayson and I'll give you 2 minutes, Grayson, to form an answer. And then Octavia, I'll give you 60 seconds to respond. And then Grayson, you'll get the final word with another 60 seconds. Grayson, what value does the knowledge of evolution bring people? What is the use of that information?
Yeah, well, its immediate use is obviously like in medicine and understanding that the way that different diseases evolve and understanding the mechanisms of evolution is obviously like really, really useful in terms of not just designing better antibiotics, but drug design in general. You can use evolution to evolve new drug species. So you don't even have to design them. You can literally use the evolutionary principles to design new drugs better than intelligent design is capable of. So there's plenty of benefits that you can get from evolution. But honestly, though, I kind of think that knowledge is valuable in its own right. Like I like learning about things for the sake of learning more about the world around me, and I consider that by in itself to be valuable, regardless of whatever technological discoveries come downstream of that.
Okay. Any response there, Octavio?
Learning about biodiversity or learning about organisms, I think is great. Excuse me. I think it's fantastic. We should all seek for knowledge. We should all be learning about, our environment and how it relates to us, and so on and so forth. But that's not what evolution is. Evolution is a claim, okay, and they claiming that single-celled organism. Okay, I know you atheists hate me saying this word I'm going to say next, transformed into every bloody organism that we see. I don't know how many we've got today. I think I've read somewhere that apparently it's 8.7 million organisms. That's my issue with evolution. It's that it claims that this has taken place. And I'm sorry to say this, but it really pisses me off because I'm thinking, okay, I don't see it. How can they claim this? So if we're talking about just studying the environment and studying the biodiversity around us, I think it's absolutely great. Seek knowledge by all means, but this is not what evolution is about. This
All
is
right.
not what evolution is. So
Thank you,
that's my
Octavio. Final word, Grayson?
Yeah, well, I think that my interlocutor maybe has a very different impression about what evolution is than myself or evolutionary biologists. So I'm happy to get more into that, maybe like in the specifics of the debate itself. Like I think that the value of the theory of evolution has clearly been demonstrated in the medical field, but like I said, to me, the value is understanding how the world works.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, Octavio, question for you. If you were to be convinced of evolution, what would that mean?
stop believing in God. That's what that means. That's exactly
Wow.
what that would mean. I would stop believing in God. Um, I would believe that, like I said before, we evolved from a single-celled organism. Um, that's and I mean that would just throw morality out the window. That would throw how I view life would completely change. And I don't think it would. I don't think it would have good results, morally speaking. I don't think it would have a good impact on me. But yeah, that's what it would mean. I think evolution was created in order to stop people from believing that the existence of humanity, everything that we see around us, depends on God and not on evolution, so to speak. So yeah, so that's what it would mean. It would mean me not believing in God. Um, yeah, that's
All
my
right.
answer to that.
Response, Grayson?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're letting way too much ride on like whether or not evolution is true. Like, I mean, it sounds like if you look at the data and you conclude what the data is showing, it's evolution, and like you're saying that it would change your entire moral system. Like that is just such a high amount of things. Like I feel like you built this up in your mind to where, either everything that you believe in is correct or evolution is correct and everything you think is wrong. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that black and white. Like the majority of Christians on earth are theistic evolutionists. They don't consider it to be a salvation issue. It doesn't affect the rest of your theology, in my mind, at least. I know plenty of good Christians who believe in God and accept that the evidence shows that we evolved from single cellular organisms. So we'll get into that, I suppose.
All right, thank you. Final word on that, Octavio?
Yeah, Grayson, I disagree. I think it will have horrible ramifications once a person says that God no longer exists, and because I believe in evolution, evolution goes against the belief that God created humanity because He created us for a purpose, right? But yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. But yeah, that's
Yeah, actually, I think that almost makes for another great topic someday of does evolution completely dismantle God? I got to be honest, Octavio, when I asked that question, that was not the answer I thought I'd get. That was heavy, dude. Anyways, before we get into the real debate, the 40-minute open discussion, just want to ask anyone out there who's watching. Well, first, let me just thank you for watching and thanks for coming out and checking everyone, Grayson and Octavio and myself, discuss this topic openly. And since you're here, if you wouldn't mind just going down and tickling that like button and subscribing. And you know what? I gotta raise the engagement in my comments. So if you guys if you're watching this in the future, leave a comment down below. Leave a question. I'm sure Octavio and Grayson will be watching these comments for at least the next week.
Can I help with that real quick, Justin, actually? Because I see Robert Rice in the live chat, and I just have to help him because he actually helped me get a book. He helped me afford this book that was a very expensive book on protein chemistry. So I just have to shout him out and say thank you. And to those of you that are watching this, you should comment below because I'm trying to fill up my bookshelf with cool little props. I got some DNA. I got the Earth. I want to get a brain or something or a galaxy. Somebody comment what you think I should have behind my head when I talk. I'd be interested in reading those comments afterwards, and it helps out Justin's channel with the algorithm. So please comment what objects I should get next.
Yeah, I've had great growth over here. I'm looking at a very possible 500 subbies by the end of the year, which would be huge for me. But that target is that 1,000. I would really love to hit that 1,000. In fact, I see I got a couple of new subscribers even just now. So I have to assume that it was one of you gentlemen that carried them over here. So thank you for that. With that, let's get to the meat and potatoes of tonight's discussion. Is evolution real? 40 minutes, gentlemen. Ding, ding.
I have a question for you, Octavio. Are you familiar with the argument from incredulity? Have you heard that term before?
Now go ahead. Remind me again.
So an argument from incredulity is a form of a fallacy, basically, where you argue from your own sense of incredulity, where you just you find something unbelievable, or to you, the arguments you don't buy it. So therefore that's your argument against them being true. But that is you can Google it, Google an argument from incredulity. You can read that it is a logical fallacy. It's not a valid form of argument. And that was one of the main arguments that I was hearing from your opening.
Okay. What specifically?
So you were saying that, yeah, Grayson presented all these arguments, but it's not good enough for me to buy them. And so therefore I'm going to use my own incredulity about it as an argument against it. But the argument against the evidence that I presented should have to do with the specifics of the evidence, or something that you say, well, you said this and that doesn't logically follow, or here's where your argument is weak. But instead you just said yes to all that you said, but no, I just don't buy it. It's got to have more substance to it as a response.
Yeah. I get what you're saying there, Grayson. And I did that on purpose. And the reason why I did that is because I don't want to go down the same rabbit hole that you guys always go into, which is, I've heard arguments from theists and I've heard arguments from atheists, from evolutionists, and you guys always go back and forth and nothing ever comes out of it. Okay. It's always the same. Once you've watched one debate, you've watched them all. What I'm basically saying is let's move the conversation forward. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we are never going to reach some kind of conclusion as to whether this is true, because theists say this is not true, people that don't believe in evolution, not necessarily just theists, people that don't believe in evolution say it's not true, and people that do believe in evolution say it's true. And it's always the same arguments being, they always use the same arguments to debate each other. I'm saying, look, I need to see this happening. You cannot tell me, and I don't think I'm unwilling to believe anything you say. I don't think that's the case. What I'm basically saying is, look, listen, you're making this claim, not me. You're saying that this happened. All right, this took place. This single-celled organism really turn into all these millions of organisms. You're saying this is true. Well, Grayson, I need you to show it to me. I need you to. That's what I'm saying. It's not. I don't think it's an argument from incredulity. I
Right.
think it's really just trying to get you to show it to me.
Okay.
That's what it is. And then I'll
I
believe.
hear what you're saying, and I agree to the spirit of it. Where if I'm going to believe something, I need a good reason or good evidence to believe that. So I
Thank you. Yeah.
understand you coming from that perspective, where you feel like you don't have a good reason or good evidence to accept that evolution is real yet. But I don't think that I'm a little bit more optimistic than you are now, because I don't think that it's just, oh, we're never going to see eye to eye on this. I think that we can come together, and I think maybe we have to start at some common ground. So would we both be able to agree that in order to figure out what is true about reality, the best way to do that would be to look at the actual evidence in reality, and then we can derive our conclusions from the evidence that we're seeing in reality? Can we agree on that much, or can we not even get to that baseline?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I can definitely agree with that.
So
But
then,
let's not forget what the question is also.
no, I have one question for you. How do you know? Like, do you believe that the year 1300 existed? Were there people on Earth in the year 1300? There was stuff going on that existed in history.
Europe was fighting the Muslims around that time. We're saving Europe against
I just
Islamic
picked a random year, to be honest. I just picked a random year.
Yes, exactly.
This is not a history quiz. Okay.
I
would just give
do
one
agree
random
that the year 1300 existed. I agree.
But you
Yes.
do accept that the year 1300 happened, right?
Yes.
So then my question for you is, why do you accept that the year 1300 has happened? Because you were not alive for the year 1300. You didn't see it yourself. You cannot see the evidence in front of your face. All you have to go off of is what? Why do you believe in the year 1300?
Historical records, historical consequences, that is palpable today. And I mean the evidence of it. For example, the year 1300. What I mentioned about Islam and Christianity. We can, these two religions still exist, and so on. So yeah, historical evidence, the historical consequences of it.
I would say
You can look at archaeology. You can look at all of these things that would show it to you. Yeah.
I would agree with your answer 100%. I accept that the year 1300 existed because of that historical evidence and the historical consequences today. And I say we have the same level of evidence for evolution from the historical evidence, which is the fossil record, and the consequences that exist today, which is the genetics in all of our bodies. It's the same level of evidence that you could accept the year 1300 existed, even though it's not right in front of your face. You can't see the year 1300. You accept it based on the historical evidence, and that is good enough evidence for you for the year 1300. So why is that not good enough evidence for evolution?
Do you believe that we have enough evidence to prove the existence of God?
No.
We don't. Why not?
I'm not aware of any evidence for that would establish that. So that's a different debate, though.
No. I'm not trying to derail the debate. I'm just asking you. Would you agree
I'll clarify
that
my position then. I don't think that there's enough evidence to establish that God does or does not exist. I just think there's a lack of evidence or reasons to believe in God or to believe that he doesn't exist.
Grayson, we are on the same page. I completely agree 100% with you, Grayson.
Okay.
There is just not enough evidence for you to believe that God exists. And I accept that. And there is no amount of, even if I say to you, like, look, this is evidence, Grayson, this is evidence that God exists. How can you deny this? You will say to me, no, mate, sorry, there's just not enough evidence. Sorry, I'm not going to go. Well, I feel the exact same way about, is evolution real? Because regardless, for example, when you talk about the similarities in the genome, I just look at it as similarities. I don't look at it as what the main claim of evolution is, which is we evolved from this. So that's how I just look at it. I just look at, okay, yeah, there's similarities. Look, listen, we all go toilet as human beings. I'm sure apes also do that. Well, they don't go to an actual toilet, but I'm sure they defecate, right? So it's like they have stomachs, we have stomachs. It's like, yeah, there's similarities.
Okay.
So what?
Okay, so there's 2 points there. One, I think you're drawing a similarity here where I think that there is difference. The reason why I say that I don't have a sufficient reason or evidence for the existence of God is because I go through each one of those evidence or reasons that people give me, and I find a specific logical flaw that I can point to those arguments. I'm not just saying, oh, well, those arguments, I just don't buy them. You know, they're just not good enough for me to change my mind. I have a specific reason that shows a logical leap that is just not following, or a lack of evidence. Like, I will go in, that's what my whole channel is about, is seeing why these arguments fail. And I try to be specific and point out the logical flaws. That's not what I'm seeing on the other end for, like, I present evidence for evolution and you're not going in and saying, well, this is why this doesn't follow from here. This is why this argument is invalid. You're just saying it's not good enough for me personally. I still remain unconvinced, which I'm saying that's not a good metric for gauging what is true or not, right? Like if somebody ran up to me and said, hey, there's a leopard that just escaped in this next street over, you better run. And I was like, that's not really good enough evidence for me. And then they're like, oh, it scratched me right here. And they're giving me all this evidence. And like, maybe that's perfectly logical evidence. And maybe I'm just like, nah, I don't buy it. And then, like, you see, if I'm not listening to the actual evidence and what the weight of the evidence is suggesting, and I'm just saying, it's not good enough. What I would really need to see is I need to see that leopard myself, or else I'm not going to believe it. No amount of evidence is enough unless I could see that leopard. And in this case, with evolution in particular, the analogy that I would have for that is like, you're trying to ask me to demonstrate to you the existence of a mile, but you're only allowing me to demonstrate it within a 12-inch ruler. And I'm like, I cannot demonstrate a mile to you in a 12-inch ruler, because what you want to see is a mile, but you're only allowing me to show it to you on a 12-inch ruler. Like, I could show you macroevolutionary changes going from a single cell to a multicellular organism, but you're probably not, at the end of the day, you're going to be, that's not strong enough evidence for me because I want to see a tree turn into a monkey or whatever. Like, it's never going to be strong enough. Like, I could show you that there was a dog species that existed in pre-Columbian North America that got wiped out, but it exists to this day, not as a dog, but as a tumor cell, as a type of transmissible cancer. So it's no longer a dog. It mutated into a totally different type of species. You said you've never seen single cell go to multi-cell. Well, this is multi-cell going to a single cell. Like, this is now a single cellular infectious organism that looks nothing like a dog, but it is literally a direct descendant from dog species that no longer exist today. So, like, what is that if not evolution?
Grayson, you know what? I agree with you.
On what?
I agree with you, Grayson. You won the debate, Grayson. I agree with you 100%.
I can't even tell if you're messing with me right now, man.
Grayson, you won the debate. You know, you know what I agree with you on, Grayson. I agree with you on a lot more than you think. I'm not disagreeing with all the similarities. I'm not. I'm just saying that this is a theory impossible to prove to my satisfaction, or to anyone's satisfaction for that matter. It's not that I don't agree with you, Grace. Like I said, it's an honor to share the stage with you, and it's an honor to talk to you about this. And you are extremely knowledgeable when it comes to evolution. Yes, I agree with you 100% that when it comes to all these similarities. But that's not the point. The claim that's being made is that this amazing thing happened, and if the topic is evolution real, then I have to consider that. I have to say, okay, am I satisfied with looking at all these similarities as meaning, yes, that single-celled organism turned into an elephant over millions and millions of years? Okay, the first thing I'm looking at is, and I'm just speaking from a layman's term, and maybe you can learn from this because it might help you engage with people that don't know much about evolution. Maybe you can you can approach it in a different way, and that will actually help them understand what's going on. Okay, it's like the way we're looking at it, as you know, as a layman person, I'm looking at it like this. Okay, how long did that take for that single-celled organism to get to that elephant? Mate, it took a very, very long time. So if it took a long time for that to happen, and well, Grace, I'm sure you know that we only live up to 60, 70. I'm never going to see this happen. So if I'm never going to see this happen, I cannot, I cannot, with all honesty, say and turn around and say, look, listen, this is real. This really does happen. I can't say that. I can't say that because similarities can be understood differently as well. There's other ways of understanding these different similarities. So that's my position. My position is yes, I agree with you that these similarities exist within the gene sequence, but I can't. The claim is this real? And well, if it's real, I have to witness it. I have to see it.
But
And
we
I don't
already
think it's
established, right, that you do accept that the year 1300 is real. So you just have a different standard of evidence. For like historical stuff, you have one standard of evidence. And then for evolutionary historical stuff, which is still the same category of learning about things that happened in the past, your standards of evidence are way, way different. Now you have to see it happen or you don't believe it. But for stuff that happened in 1300s, you're okay with accepting the historical evidence for.
all right. Remember the example that I gave you for what happened in the 1300s.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, you said the
um,
Crusades, which was a little bit earlier, but we can
yeah,
go with the
yeah, yeah.
Crusades. Like, we can just
The
talk about
Crusades, right?
the Crusades, but whatever.
No, no,
Like,
no. I'm answering your question. I'm answering your question. Seriously, I'm answering your question. You said, well, I basically, okay. We still have the Quran today. We still have the Bible today. All
mhm.
right, and what sparked the Crusades, or what sparked the invasion of Muslims into Christian lands, you can still read it in the hadiths, you can still read it in the Quran. The same claims are still being made. The claims are still there. We can still read it. We can see. So to me, that's tangible evidence. That is something that I can look at, and I'm like, oh, we still have the Quran, we still have the thing. Oh, okay, I can see that this is what inspired them. For example, to attack Christian lands, and enslave them under the Pact of Umar, and treat us like second class citizens. So I can see that behavior. And if I go to Muslim lands today, I can see that that is the case. Christians, for
Yeah.
example, over 5,000 Christians each year get murdered, get murdered every year. They still, you have to pay a special tax if you're Christian. So we can still see there's a lot of tangible evidence there that I can look at and I can say, oh yes, I can see they still behave in the same way. They're still attacking Christians. They're still blah blah blah. So it's still the same. The claims are still the same in the hadiths and in the Quran. It hasn't changed. So to me, that's enough evidence.
Okay. So, can I share my screen again, Justin? I want to go back to that chart because I really do feel that this chart right here is exactly what you just went through. Like, so you're saying that we have these written texts today that we can look at today and we can read them. That's the genetic record for all these different species. That is something that we can read today, right? And you're saying, well, look, like the text that we have from today matches the ancient texts. By comparing these two texts, we can see they're the same. And then we can see, hey, these texts had this influence, which, by the way, like, I think you're misreading the history there. The Christians were the aggressors in the Crusades, but like, we don't have
No,
to argue about
Grayson.
history on this. But
No, no, no.
we then go back and we look at the historical records and we see how that matches our text that we can read today, right? That's exactly what this chart is showing. We made this phylogenetic graph here based on just the genes. We didn't look at any fossils to like put the order here, but you can see the ones on the right are the furthest related from the ones on the left. And then we go back and we look at the fossil record, and the actual order of these things in the layer of the fossil record reflects the genes, their genetic code that's written today. So in the same way that you're trying to look at the text that we have today and compare how we see that in the historical record, this is the exact same kind of analysis here in this chart, and it matches precisely. You can see the ones on the left show up first, and then as you move to the right on this chart, which gets further and further genetically dissimilar, then you can see that the fossils are showing up higher and higher and higher in the layers of rock. How else? Like, that is direct evidence showing you that these species evolved. Like, what else could this data be demonstrating?
Similarities, maybe, evidence that, I don't know, you mentioned fossils, that organisms were buried. I mean, and of course, and I appreciate your interpretation, Grayson, of everything that you are, that you're seeing in front of you, that you are observing. It's great interpretation. But if you want to convince me, or you want to convince the layman that this is definitely, something truthful, you just have to, like, I have to come back with something better than that. It has to be, yes, mate. Because let me say something, Grayson. I've heard Fierce also debate you on these issues, and they have a different interpretation for, for what they are witnessing, and me as a theist, I'm more inclined to to side with the theist than with Grayson. But the truth is this: there are different interpretations for the same, for what we are observing. What I'm saying is, what's gonna basically make people believe is that ultimate question: did this really happen, and can we actually see it? And until I see it, Grayson, I'm sorry. It's just impossible. Can you understand that? Let me ask one question, Grayson. Um, uh, can a dog give birth to a non-dog?
No.
Well, I need one to do that, Grayson.
But that would disprove
Well,
evolution if that happened.
well, how the hell did we get from a primordial suit to?
Have you ever heard of the law of monophyly?
Yes, I've heard you talk about it with Kent Hovland. That was very entertaining, by the way.
Yeah, it's a weird word, but basically, like, all of the categories that would apply to your ancestors in terms of their classification also apply to the descendants. So, like, all of your ancestors, like, there was a first mammal, and then all of its descendants are mammals. It'll continue to give birth to mammals. Like, no matter how different they become, they're still mammals. Even if they go back and they lose all their hair and everything, and they become whales in the ocean, they don't look anything like little rodent mammals. They look more like fish. They're still mammals because that's what their ancestors were.
Can you show me one? Can you show me one going to a well in the ocean? Can you show me one?
Here is what I will say. Right, when you're asking, like, I need to see the whole thing right now. I can't just look at individual steps and extrapolate. I think Mark Reed gives a very good example of this. Right, the revolution of Uranus, okay, takes hundreds of years. Nobody has ever seen it. We have not had the telescope technology to watch one complete revolution of the planet Uranus. But, like, nobody doubts that it's gonna revolve over and over again. We've never even seen it do one full one, but we can all just look at the path that it's on currently and extrapolate. So, to that, you would agree that every child is genetically different from their parents, right? A little bit. There's always a little bit of mutations every single generation. Right?
Yeah.
So then you would agree that a parent is going to be more different than their grandchildren than their children, right? It's like those differences add up every single generation, right? So then, like, the difference between generation 0 and generation 2 is going to be less than generation 0 and generation 100. And those differences every single generation, those tiny little differences, they just continue to add. There's no backtracking. You just get more and more and more and more different every single generation. So where does this, you're saying, like, if evolution is not true, then at some point those differences have to stop, and they cannot get any more different, because then they would be a different species. But you're saying that something stops them from getting different every single generation, even though in the real world that you can see with your eyes, every single generation is different.
And where is it leading to?
Where is it leading to?
Yeah.
It just gets more and more optimized for its environment.
In your worldview, what, these differences in generations and so on, where does it eventually lead to? Does it lead to something, a new creation?
So it's always going to be an interplay with the environment. If the environment changes, the direction that's leading changes. So basically, evolution trends towards these fitness peaks. You can look at it, you can think about like a little peak and saying like the guy at the top is the most fit for the environment that they're in. So evolution's always going to be getting closer and closer to these fitness peaks. But as soon as the environment changes, like you got climate change or an asteroid or a volcano or something, the environment is just always going to be changing. And that change is where
Let's say the environment changes. Sorry,
huh?
Grayson. Sorry, Grayson. Sorry, Grayson. Let's say the environment changes. Just go with me.
You're saying it does or doesn't?
Let's say the environment does change.
Okay.
And you know what happens after? I'm trying to get
So
to
when the environment changes, the fitness peaks also are going to change, because what was the most fit for one environment is not going to be the most fit for the other. Like what's most fit for a desert is not going to be most fit for Antarctica. So like,
I agree with that.
desert, but you know what I mean. And so when the environment changes, the fitness peak changes. So the organisms, those populations are always going to be chasing that highest fitness peak for their current environment. But because the environment's always changing, those organisms are always going to have to be, it's like chasing a moving goalpost. So that's the direction it's heading. It's just always
when does that
fit for the current environment.
that's fine. That's fine. And when do we stop looking like humans, or when do we stop being humans and become something else? When does that happen?
So
Do you have a prediction
it
for
is
that?
110% dependent on our environment. For example, like you've seen like the horseshoe crab or the coelacanth, like creationists give all these examples of like animals that look like they haven't changed for millions of years, right? And they're like, oh, where's the evolution? But like I said, evolution is always going to be trending towards that fitness peak. So if the environment doesn't change, then that fitness peak doesn't change. And that organism's appearance isn't going to change for millions of years, because there's nothing that's driving it to change, because it's already at the fitness peak. So for an example, a fruit fly is very close to the fitness peak in its current environment right now. A horseshoe crab, very close to the fitness peak. Like if they change a little bit, they're going to be less fit for their current environment. In order for them to change their form, their environment is what has to change. They're not going to just change as long as their environment stays the same. They have no reason to change, because the little small changes are going to make them less fit, not more fit. So in order for evolution to happen rapidly, like you're wanting, the environment has to change rapidly. So if humans are going to change, right? You're saying when are humans going to change? Humans right now
say millions of years.
Well,
is that why it takes millions of years?
Humans control our own environment right now, so we're kind of messing with that, and we can change and manipulate our own DNA. So it's going to be impossible to predict for humans specifically. But like, if you were to drop like one type of animal into a different type of environment, you could register some pretty quick changes.
Okay. Is that what takes millions of years? Is that how the millions of years basically comes about?
Well, the millions of years is because, like I said, each one of those generations is only slightly different from their parents. So it takes multiple generations. It's the same way that, like you understand, like languages change over time. So in the future, your great grandkids are not going to be speaking English. English is going to change, and like it's inevitable that languages change over time. That has never happened in human history, where the languages just don't change. So, and that's because the language you speak is slightly different than the language your parents speak, which is slightly different than your grandparents. And every generation, their language changes a little bit. But it's not like an English speaker is just going to give birth to a Chinese speaker. It doesn't work like that. It's the same for evolution. Like you don't just get a monkey giving birth to a tree, okay? You don't get a French speaker giving birth to a Spanish speaker. But eventually, over time, we know in history, Latin did turn into Spanish and French. Like it's just one generation after the next. It's like every single generation, the kids could understand their parents. It's not like they're giving birth to kids that speak a different language.
So is it possible for me to one day witness this?
If maybe you were immortal.
Mm-hmm.
If you were immortal and you didn't die, but like because look, you need to witness over multiple.
So you were doing so well, Grayson. You were doing so well. I was with you, Grayson, the whole way. I was like, yes. Grayson's going to answer my question. And then You messed it all
Okay,
up.
Octavio, look.
Grayson, I
Wait,
need
wait.
to see it, Grayson. And you're telling me you got me excited up to this point, and I was thinking, yes, 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 yes. Are we gonna see? Nah, I have to
Okay,
be
okay, okay.
immortal for it.
Let's talk
I'm not
specifically about what
immortal,
you want to see.
Grayson. When I
Let me
get
talk
to heaven, I'll
specifically
be
about what you
immortal.
want to see here, because what you're asking for is you want to see change over thousands of generations, right? And so, because for the kind of change that you want to see big changes. You can't get big changes in 1 or 2 or 3 generations. But the problem is, you, Octavio, are one generation. You're just one guy. So if you're asking that you want to see a change that occurs over thousands of generations, but you want to see it in one generation. So that is just like it's like asking,
Okay,
you know, yeah,
okay.
it doesn't make sense.
Do you know why? Do you know why I demand so much? The reason why I demand so much is because I have children, 3 beautiful children. All right, and and just I was indoctrinated with this theory of evolution, and I'm only starting to rediscover the theory of evolution now that I've opened up a channel. Because I know I'm going to be having these debates, so I kind of have to dust off my books. But the thing is, I don't. I don't have the luxury of time because I need my kids to know whether or not I need to teach them. I need to tell them whether this theory is true or not,
Mhm.
whether evolution is real or not. And I need to make a decision because I do believe that if I don't make a decision, the consequences for them, morally speaking, will be drastic. So this is the reason why I'm like, okay, I kind of need to see this happening in front of me.
Right here. You can see it right here. This is a picture. This
And
is
this is
all
the
you
reason
need.
why I'm demanding for this level of evidence,
Look, this
which
is it.
Grayson, you won't be able to provide. You won't be able to provide it. And don't get me
Right
wrong, your arguments are great. I love it. I love your arguments. But this is why I was like, okay, so what happens afterwards? Are we going to see it? And you're telling me I have to be immortal, Grayson. I'm not immortal, Grayson.
Yeah, but like that's like if you had asked
I
me,
will
Grayson,
die.
is the year 2300 gonna happen? Am I gonna live to see the year 2300? I'm like, yeah, that year's gonna happen, Octavio, but you're not gonna live to see it. Like, like how can I show you the future, man? I can't show you the future in the present. That's just a physically impossible thing to ask. But if you want to see one thing where you just want to see something that says, like shouting out at the screen at you, Octavio, evolution is real. It's this graph. And again, if I the source for the chart is on the bottom. By the way, it's the compendium of fossil insect species from like the Milwaukee Museum. They listed all known fossil family of insects from every fossil family discovered, and then they just charted it in this graph here. If you understand this graph, I'm telling you, just like look at this graph for 30 minutes and I think you'll be convinced of evolution. I like this
So these
straight
are
up. I don't know how you can deny this evidence.
Gentlemen, I'd
these
like
are
to jump in
fossilized
here
insects.
real quick, if I may. Just want to let you guys know we got about 10 minutes left of this excellent debate, by the way. So keep it up, gents. It's very entertaining, very informative. But real quick, I want to draw attention to the mods I've got going on in the chat right now. You guys are fantastic. Special extra shout out to Pragmatic Crystal because they are amazing in all of our chats all across the community. So thank you, PC, for all that you do. Everyone, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and both of our debaters' channels are linked in my description. So go on over and hit a sub if you haven't already. Yeah, about 9 minutes left, gentlemen. Continue.
So Octavio, I really just want to ask, like, because you're aware that we find different fossils in different layers, right? Like when you see that, to me, that is direct, unimpeachable, like inarguable evidence of evolution. And you're saying, well, other people have different interpretations of that, right? But like we should both be able to agree that not all interpretations are equal. And like some interpretations don't work. Like if you just follow the logic, like if I told you my explanation for this chart is actually that these things are sorted by their color. And then we went and looked and saw, wait, all these fossils are the same damn color. Like, then my interpretation is just wrong. And you can't just say, well, look, I interpret it by saying these things are sorted by their color because they're objectively not. And we can independently verify that my interpretation is incorrect. Like, can we acknowledge that some
How does
interpretations are
this?
wrong?
I acknowledge that there are different interpretations, and
But can you acknowledge that some
um,
interpretations are objectively wrong?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
I agree with that. I agree with
So
that.
then,
I agree
like,
with that.
is there any?
Hold on, Grace. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. How are living organisms fossilized?
How are they fossilized?
What
Typically,
happened?
they have to be buried in some sort of anoxic conditions of sedimentation so that like the permineralization process can begin without oxygen or decay or other organisms coming in and breaking it down.
Okay, that is this something that happens rapidly, or is this something that happens slowly? Because we don't
It
have.
can be both. Yeah, it can take a
It
long
can
time to fossilize, or it can happen relatively rapidly. It just is going to depend on the specific environmental conditions.
do dead bodies do living organisms tend to fossilize these days, or do they just turn to dust?
Well, yeah, if they're not going to be sequestered in some sort of protected environment away from oxygen and bacteria, then they're just going to rot and decay. So fossilization is very rare.
Fossilization is very rare today. Okay,
Yeah.
I've heard, and believe me, I don't want to go into the whole flood thing, but I've heard people bring up that argument that that's a good interpretation for why so many living organisms were fossilized, and so on. And I just want to know what you think about that because again, this is another interpretation. This is another interpretation,
Yeah.
Grayson, and the flood kind of seems a bit plausible. Would you agree with the flood if there was no God involved in it?
No.
There was no Bible.
No.
No. Okay,
Like
go ahead.
honestly,
Yeah.
if the evidence did support a global flood, I would have absolutely no problem with that. Like I don't even wouldn't even consider that to be supporting evidence for God. So I don't have an issue. It doesn't affect my opinion of God at all whether or not there's a flood. I'm just telling you objectively, a flood cannot explain this chart. Like if you look at actual like there are archaeological deposits that everybody agrees are from giant floods like in the channeled scablands in the Pacific Northwest in like Washington and Oregon. There's a huge area of land that is the largest flood deposit on Earth. That like all the geologists are like, this is from a mega flood, and we know what that looks like. We know what kind of layers it creates. We know how it distributes fossils, and it doesn't look anything like this. Like this is sorted into nice, neat individual layers where the different fossils in these layers have the same body density, the same habitats, the same mobility, the same intelligence. Anything that a flood could sort them by is the same. And yet they are sorted very neatly by species with no exceptions. It's like a flood cannot do that. It's like when I told you before that I could interpret it as saying that these are sorted by their color. And then we just look at what color they are, and they're clearly not sorted by color. It's the same thing with the flood. Like people can say that a flood could sort this, but then we just look at the way they're sorted and we know 100% a flood could not replicate it.
Is there evidence for what you're saying right now? For example, if we I don't know, create a flood somewhere and saw this happening, for you to say what you're saying right now?
Yeah, I mean, we could,
What you're saying right now.
yeah, okay, so I'll pull up a study that shows exactly what I was talking about to back up what I'm saying about the mega flood deposits and what those actually look like in the channeled scablands. Because this is like everybody agrees. Oh crap, I didn't copy and paste that right. Everybody agrees that there are mega flood deposits on Earth from giant floods. And the biggest flood deposits are not even on Earth, they're on Mars. So we know what giant flood deposits like floods like literally the size of like a continent. We know what those floods look like geologically. Let me stop this screen. So I'll just gonna show you my source because you were asking if there's supporting evidence. This is what I was
Mm.
a source that I like to use. You got that, Justin? So yeah, this is the study that I like. Freshwater, mega flood, sedimentation. So this is like a literature review of all the different publications in geology about what actual flood sequences look like. And then we have here a list of their characteristics. Like they give 6 different characteristics for what an actual sequence that is laid down by a flood looks like in the geologic record. And so you can compare this to any other layer on Earth, and you can see that a flood did not deposit those other layers, like igneous layers, metamorphic layers. Like there are literally layers of sediment where you have an entire forest, then a layer from a volcanic eruption. So you have all the fossilized forest, then a volcanic eruption, then another forest on top, then another volcanic eruption, then another full-grown forest with adult trees, then another volcanic eruption, and it's 27 times. How is a flood going to make that happen? You know, that's a full forest grew and then got destroyed by a volcano, then it grew back, then destroyed, then grew back, then destroyed 27 times in 1 year flood. It just doesn't work. It's that, and that area is called Specimen Ridge. That's in Yellowstone.
Specimen Ridge, yeah. I'm definitely gonna look into that. I just wanted to hear what you think about the flood theory that a lot of young Earth creationists usually bring up when they debate you. But I'm definitely going to look at the sources that because I'm going to be investigating this. But yeah,
If you could, Octavio, like when you're looking into it, maybe we could exchange emails or something, and you can let me know,
yes,
because I really do want to know if there is any possible explanation for the things I'm talking about. I want to know it, because I do challenge creationists on this. I talk with creationist geologists and I ask them, how can you possibly explain this? How could a flood do this? And I have not heard any answer. Like, they're not even offering me a potential interpretation. Like, I'm just asking a possible interpretation, just one. So if you find one, please do let me know, because like I genuinely do want to hear that.
Oh, we have to exchange emails, definitely, absolutely, definitely, because I'm going to be investigating the hell out of this. So
Cool.
yeah, definitely.
Because like I don't know, some people might think that like debate bros are like bad faith and like not actually trying to get to the truth and just trying to defend their own position or whatever. But like, I really do care what the evidence shows and like what we can conclude from the actual evidence. So if I have the evidence wrong, or if my conclusions from the evidence are wrong, I actually want to know why. And I don't want to just hear, oh, I don't believe it, it's not good enough for me. I want to know what's wrong with my evidence. Why does it not work?
I agree. I agree with the way you think, and I believe I will prove you wrong. I will prove you wrong. But I don't like to debate in bad faith. I don't like to talk about things that I don't know anything about. I don't think we can progress if that's the case. But it still doesn't prove that evolution is real, Grayson.
Why
And
does it not?
because you haven't met my standard of evidence. And I agree that according to your standard, you agree. You see, my standard is a little bit different. You have to meet that standard, and you're telling me I have to be immortal. This is what I've heard from you so far, and you are the expert. You are the guy. You are the man. You are the one who knows this inside out. And I
Okay,
came
wait,
to
hold
you.
on. I just want to clarify. I have to clarify for those listening. Like, I do not have a degree in evolutionary biology. I'm just a guy that likes science. Okay, I'm not like an actual expert. I'm just a
Don't be
science.
modest. Don't be modest, Grayson. Don't be modest. But yeah, I came to you. I came to you, Grayson, and I gave you my standard of evidence. And I thought if anyone knows about this, it's Grayson. All right. I came to you via Justin.
Okay, but Octavio, why are you so confident that your standard of evidence is the correct standard to have here? Because, like we already went over, you have a very different standard of evidence for evolution than you do for any other historical event. Like evolution, right? If evolution happened, you would agree that evolution was a historical event?
Yes, it would
So
have
then
to be
we
a
should
history.
have the same standard of evidence for any other historical event.
It's okay. It's the interpretations. It's you have an interpretation. Grayson has an interpretation. I've heard other fears they have a different interpretation. They're looking at the same data and they're saying, "Okay, I'm interpreting this in this way. I'm interpreting," and then I'm in the middle and I'm thinking to myself, "Okay, which one makes more sense to me?" And I'm looking at my present time, me, just looking at this huge claim, this claim that we evolved from single-celled organisms. And I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell did a bacteria that can hardly see with my eye become a bloody elephant? And I'm sitting there thinking, how did this happen? And Grayson wasn't able to prove it to me.
Right. Okay. Hold on.
Well,
Right.
no,
If
no, hold on.
Okay.
So that's pretty much time. Also, to be fair, I feel like I mean, this has been a great debate. It's been fantastic. Both your attitudes are super great. So thank you so much for that. But the last like 2 times now, we're getting into the just
Okay.
Octavio's not convinced. Grayson's just like what, and it's great. It's great. But
Can I have one little concluding thing based on what he just said as my conclusion, and then Octavio can have a conclusion?
sure.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, because I actually like we can find some common agreement here at the end where I think that what you were just outlining is a good process where you're saying, look, here's the data, right? We have the fossil record, we have the genetic sequences, right? Here's the actual evidence. And you're saying, Grayson's given me these interpretations of the evidence, and then these like creationists are giving me this interpretation. And so you're saying what you are in the position of is you're trying to say, does Grayson's interpretation make more sense, or does the creationist interpretation make more sense? And you're saying that you've done the weighing here and you find the creationists make more sense. Okay. I think that is a good process to go through, but I just want specifically, I want you to take more time weighing that assessment. Like, look at the actual evidence that I went through tonight. Like the insect fossil record versus the phylogenetics for insects. That specifically. Look at the creationist interpretations for how they can make that make sense, because I don't think that they have any good one. And then look at the explanations I offered tonight, and I really don't understand how you could go with the creationist interpretation. I really don't, Octavio. And if you go through this analysis, you honestly, genuinely look at this data with an open mind and look at both interpretations. If you still think that the creationist interpretation makes more sense for this data, we gotta talk about that again, man, because I just have to figure out why you think that their interpretation can explain anything about this data, because I just don't see it, man.
Um, and thanks for that. I really appreciate that. And that's why I want to stay in touch with you. Because this is something that I will be looking into consistently and literally all the time because I'm really interested in it, to be honest with you. And as my channel grows, people are asking these questions every time I react to. This is why I haven't had done many reactions on evolution, because I knew what I would attract a bunch of atheists. But remember what I basically said in the beginning, which was, okay, I need to see this happening in front of me. But I'm going to look into everything that you've claimed. Definitely, without a doubt, Grayson, I'm going to be in contact with you. And yeah, we're going to see what happens after that. But I'm not on one side or another side. I'm more on my side. And my side is, bloody hell, Grayson wants me to believe in this, and just I haven't seen no bloody evidence for it. But yeah, but this is just my side, not necessarily the creationist side. I have questions for both when it comes to the particulars of the evolution, the theory of evolution. Yes, Justin. Go
All
ahead.
right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Yeah, that was a great time, but we're not quite done yet. I do have a couple of questions here, and anyone out there in the chat, I know how this goes. I've got 2 questions now, but once we start answering them, 15 more will pop up. So just make sure you at Skeptic Spin, so I see them. Okay. So first, someone who's never been here before, never asked a question before. That's not true at all. Octavio, you know that. We got Ember. Says, question for Octavio. Couldn't God use evolution? If so, why wouldn't he? It seems pretty effective.
And just logically, it doesn't make sense, does it? If he has the power to create a human being, why the hell go through a process that took billions and billions and billions of years just to create a flawed human being that works against its own existence? It just doesn't make any sense. If he has the power to do it, if you had the power to do it, I mean, what would you do? That would be my question to you. Would you allow evolution, the process of evolution, or would you just create Adam and Eve? Which one would you go
You want to
Yeah,
respond to that, Grayson?
yeah, I do, because this is really fascinating to me, because every time I ask a creationist or like just like a religious person, like of any like Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, whatever, anytime I ask a question about why would God do it this way instead of this way, they always tell me like, well, look, you're not God, okay? You can't try to see into God's mind and figure out why he would do this or that. Like, So like to me, like asking, well, why would God do it through evolution rather than just poofing it all into existence? It's like, well, why would God send a global flood rather than just poofing away all the bad guys? Why did he have to kill all the innocent animals and babies and stuff? Like, if you start going down this track of why did God do this instead of this, like there's a lot of other questions that can pop up down that rabbit hole we could get to. So I don't think you want to play the game of like, you know, God just works in mysterious ways. Leave it at that, like the rest of the Christians do, right?
Last word there, Octavio?
No. I think God doesn't necessarily work in mysterious ways. Yes, why would why would God, I mean, if He has the power, why would God go through a process of evolution? I mean, trust me, I'm not a creationist. I'm Catholic, so I see things a little bit differently, Grayson. So yeah.
Hey, my
Um,
whole family's Catholic, man, on my dad's and mom's side. So most of my relatives are too. So I kind of understand the Catholic perspective a little bit.
Good. Good. I'm actually, wow, amazing. What happened to you, Grayson? Stop studying
I
that
I was
evolution and
not
go back
raised
to
Catholic.
church.
My parents were raised Catholic. I was not.
Stay tuned for
Oh,
another show on Skeptic Spin where Grayson and Octavio have a cup of coffee together. Our next question from Tanya Brown at Skeptic Spin. The first study that Grayson shared was on statistical likelihood of convergent evolution of separate families. How is that relevant to us when we don't believe in similarities evolved? Wow, I'm surprised I did most of that without tripping on my face. Grayson.
Because it's a direct test of separate ancestry versus common ancestry. So she's saying, how is that relevant to us when we don't believe similarities evolved? Because, like, you believe that the similarities were inherited from a common ancestor, but you just believe that that common ancestor was like the cat kind for all cats today. And you say that's why all the cats today have these genetic similarities because they all come from one cat ancestor that God created whenever, you know? So the idea is that this is a direct test of that model because you're not just comparing all of the cats together, you're comparing all the cats and all the dogs, right? You're saying, does the dog kind and the cat kind, what are their similarities, right? So that's why it's a test of separate ancestry or common ancestry where all the ancestors ultimately go back to one single-celled organism. So it's a direct test of that statistically.
yeah, similarities doesn't prove evolution to me. I actually agree that all cat. I personally believe that the entire cat family evolved from, I don't know, a first cat. But the lion, and you got the cat, and so on. I think they all come from the same family. Um, but yeah, these similarities to me does not prove evolution at all.
Yeah, this actually, I wish that we had gotten to this because I kept meaning to ask you about paternity tests because you said, oh, well, similarity doesn't prove relation, but it totally 100% does. And this is not controversial
Well, we
at
can
all.
end this stream and just start another one right away, and then you can bring it up.
I'm just saying, like, if you took a paternity test, you know who your kids are based on genetic similarities. So similarities do absolutely show relationship, and nobody argues this.
Yeah,
All right.
but you
No,
okay? So.
I didn't really want to go too far into it. I like just like you
It's
get
a hit
one
and run there,
response.
Octavio.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Let me put it to you guys this way. I love moderating these debates, and I love trying to, I have a hard time building a pool of theists to debate. So Octavio's been here twice so far. I have a couple on deck there that are interested. With that, I forget my point now, but
You love
yeah, I
moderating?
want to create the habit of a little bit of structure on the response to these questions, because the hope will be that one day I'll be monetized and these will be super chats or whatever. And we've seen other formats like this where the Q&A section becomes longer than the debate. I have no desire to hit that point, right? With that, next question is for Grayson. Do chickens have large talons?
This guy asks me this on every single stream I'm on. I don't know who
Okay.
this guy is or why he asks me if chickens have large talons. I don't know, guy. I'm not a chicken expert. I don't know why you're coming to me for your chicken facts, but like just Google it, my guy.
Don't know either.
You don't know anything about chickens, Octavio?
No, I heard apparently they evolved or descended from dinosaurs. Uh, the T-Rex, really, Grayson?
They're not
I'm sorry.
directly from the T-Rex. The T-Rex went extinct. It did not evolve into birds. But other dinosaurs did, and chickens and birds are still technically dinosaurs in the same way that we are mammals.
Delicious.
Oh, wait. We agree. We agree.
Common ground achieved.
I don't know I don't know one single individual person that doesn't like chicken. I just got to say it. I've never met one person that told me they just don't like chicken.
In fact, I think chickens like chicken, don't they? Isn't it like, won't chickens eat chicken?
Yeah, even chickens know they taste delicious.
Speaking of delicious, we got another question from Ember. To answer Octavio, yes, I would use evolution. I could make anything I can imagine, but with evolution, I can make beings even I can't imagine. It's the stone God can lift riddle solved.
I don't get what they're trying to say. Yes, I would use evolution.
So I believe what Ember is trying to point out is actually very, very interesting. Imagine yourself a god and you create, instead of creating all of the creatures on Earth based on your own designs, you create a system for which they can evolve, therefore becoming creatures even you as a god couldn't have invented or imagined. Therefore, so that's, I think Ember's point is
I see.
the stone that God can't lift riddle is solved.
It's like, can God create a bean burrito that's so spicy that even he can't eat it? It's basically that, but it's like, can God design something that even he cannot imagine? And Ember is saying that if God used evolution, then he could design something that he couldn't even imagine. So that makes him a more powerful God.
Question to Ember: Why millions of years?
Well,
why does it have to take millions of years? Why the millions of years? Why do we have to wait for millions and millions and millions of years?
Isn't God independent of time?
He is. He's outside of time, space.
So yeah, it's like, didn't it say in the Bible for God, like 1 day is 1,000 years, or 1,000 years is a day, or something like that?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, what is 1,000,000 years to God? What's the difference between that and a split second to him?
1,000,000 years to God is probably nothing. But
yeah, there you go. Then that's your answer.
What I'm asking is why create a system that will, create all these organisms over millions of years? Why not shorter than that? I'll be honest with you. If God did it that way, I would actually believe in evolution, because guess what, Grayson? We would be able to see it.
You mean like it was happening so fast that you just, like, one of your 3 kids was just like a crocodile?
Wow. Oh, I see it. Grayson, right. We would not be having this debate.
I don't want Grayson to start referring.
One of your kids is a fruit roll up, and the other one is
my goodness.
That's evolution.
All right. And as we enter the realm of absurd, let's move on. Enslaved by truth. In scripture, God made man from dirt, which existed before man. Could this be a nod to evolution for Octavio?
No, because he breathed life. Yes, he made men from dust, but you forgot that one bit there where he says he breathed life. So life comes specifically from God, not from matter. So yes, we were made of matter, flesh and so on and so forth, but the actual life itself, that came from God, because he breathed life into Adam.
Grayson, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, like, these are like Iron Age stories. I really don't think that they were writing them with any kind of idea about evolution or the Big Bang or any of the scientific discoveries we made last century.
Iron Age stories, really, Grayson?
I mean, that is objectively
millions of years. Iron Age stories. Iron Age stories is sooner than millions of years. Which one's
Hey man,
oldest?
if I went back in time and I talked to the smartest man on the planet in the Iron Age, I mean, like he's gonna know less information about the world than your average fifth grader today.
Wow, Grayson, really, that is big of you. It really is. No,
Yeah.
I doubt that.
Just in terms
Guys,
of like, I'm not talking about being in terms of wisdom. I'm just talking about knowledge about the world around us. Like the Iron Age guy is gonna tell me, oh yeah, you're gonna run into the sea monsters if you go that way.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to technology, I see your point. I see your point.
Not just technology, the knowledge about how reality works.
How reality works? In what
Yeah.
sense?
Like evolution would be one sense.
I disagree.
all right. Moving on. I believe this is my next question. We got Tanya Brown. Exactly. If it was a test of creation, they would look at the statistical likelihood of the differences, not the similarities. So
That
this
would
is a
be the
follow-up, I
same.
believe, to
Tanya, that would be the same number. Like it would be the same number. You're looking at the overall genetic similarity. You just take 1 minus. Like it's the same analysis mathematically. It doesn't make a difference at all.
Okay.
All right. And our last question here is from Robert Rice at Skeptic for Grayson. What's your favorite book for the average layperson that details the evidence for evolution?
I'm gonna be right back. I'll get it.
Octavio might like the book by Kenneth Miller,
Yes,
who is a
yes.
Catholic and biologist.
That's a good question. That's a good
So
question.
let's
Well
just
done.
sit here in silence while Grayson awkwardly
No,
left open, like,
um, guys, listen. You have to understand. Is evolution real? Is
I
one
had it
hell
on
of
the
a.
wrong bookshelf. My bad. It was literally right behind me. Okay. First of all, I would suggest Kenneth Miller. I mean, excellent book. Octavia, you might like him, but I really like this one because Your Inner Fish by Neil Shubin. Because the things that you were talking about earlier about how you just like for the historical evidence, you want to see the historical evidence match up to explain why the world today is like it is. And so you were saying that's what, the stuff in the 1300s, it explains the way the world is today. And so this explains via our evolutionary history from fish to man, it explains why our anatomy is the way it is in ways that an intelligent designer would not design the human body to do. So it explains why the human body is the
Let me
works
see
the
that
way that
book,
it does.
Grayson.
Your
Let me see
inner
that
fish.
book. Your inner fish, a
It's
journey
by
through.
Neil Shubin, and Neil
Neil
Shubin is the
Schubert.
guy that discovered this thing on the title, Tiktaalik, the missing link between fish and land animals. He's the one that
Mm.
discovered it, and he used evolution to predict exactly what layer and where on Earth he would find it. And he went there and found exactly what he predicted should be there. And he used evolution to he was like, if I go to this island in northern Canada, I should be able to find a thing that's halfway between a fish and a land animal, and it should be like a fish that has like wrist bones and a neck. And then he went to there in Canada and he found 3 of them. And nobody had ever found one of these before. Nobody had ever seen anything with anatomy like this. And he found 3. So,
Oh
hey,
wow.
I think this is a
Oh
pretty
wow.
good book.
Oh wow. You haven't convinced me. Like, yes, I will definitely be looking into that book.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of our debate, and I would argue it's evolved into a perfect debate. I mean, 90 minutes. We got some questions in. We had smiles across the board. I love it. I like it very much. Real quick, I'll
Yeah,
just
you're a cool guy, Octavio. Sometimes I do these debates
Thank
and
you.
I
You
end
too.
with like a
You
feeling
too.
of just like frustration. And I'm like, man, that guy, it is so annoying to talk to that guy. But like, you're cool, man. I think we could be friends. I don't have that feeling at all with you. So this was fun.
yeah.
Likewise, I'll be honest with you. A lot of the times when I debate, I honestly disagree with the person I'm debating with, their position. But I believe that the aim should always be to learn, and you can learn from the other person because we don't know everything, and it's best to take that attitude into any debate. I think it makes for a better debate where you two don't end up being hostile towards each other. So yeah, you're a great guy. You're a great guy. I can. I didn't
Yeah, when
think
the
you could
debaters start getting
about this at all.
hostile to each other, the audience ends up being an audience
Yeah, well,
that's
you know
here
what,
for
Octavio?
a
You're an
different
even
reason.
greater guy. How about that?
Yeah, so on that note,
Uh,
if anyone who's watching right now thinks that they have what it takes to come on up and debate, or if you know someone, maybe there's another, especially on like the theist side of things, if you know someone who would probably work out great on stage here, put their names in my comments section. Let me know, because no offense to Octavio, who is right now officially welcome anytime. I don't want to make all my debates the Octavio show. It would be nice to have some variety.
And
Right?
there are a lot of keyboard warriors that I'm seeing in chat right now who think
Yes.
that they could easily prove evolution is not true. So I'm just saying, like,
Even if they don't
Octavio,
want to themselves debate, let me know who another person on another channel you think would actually respond to an email from me, and I'll try to get them over here and on here.
okay. All right.
I
Okay.
do have a
Yeah.
new person who is interested. Their concern was that a debate could just become like just nuclear meltdown and just become a whole lot of name calling and stuff. And she watched the Octavio Mark Reed debate, and she was like, "Oh, well, if it's like that, I could totally just like enjoy talking with Mark Reed and stuff." So, yeah, so I want to maintain this atmosphere for as long as I can, because I think we can find a pool of people who are interested to come and debate honestly and have the discussions, right?
hey, well, you were always my favorite moderator on MDD, Justin. So you're really the one that's.
This is the first mod debate I mod with you, even.
Yes, it is the first time that you've moderated any debate I've been in. And I just got to say, man, you're the one who's setting the tone for this channel. I think we're all chilled because you're so chill, man.
You know
So
what? You're right. Screw you guys. It's
Octavio and I are
all
giving
me.
each other compliments, man. But really, like the tone of the channel's on you, brother.